Welcome back to Let's Talk Race and Ireland. I'm your host, Harrison Paul. Today, we're going to talk about a very unfortunate situation. The DPP directs no prosecution of Garda who shot George Nkencho. George Nkencho is a brother from Ireland. For anybody who's viewing from outside of the country, this has been a landmark case, really. It happened the same year as George Floyd. But obviously we're hearing now it's not going the same way. And I'm gonna dissect this in a little bit. George, for anybody who doesn't know, is a brother who was suffering severely from mental health. He was having one of his episodes, meltdown, and I think he was at a store when he had a meltdown, and then the police pursued him all the way to his front door. There were, lies that were spewed online and myths and rumors about who he had slashed, who he had done this to and done that, which were completely false. He was having this breakdown, and on his way home, the police followed him the way home. When he arrived home, on his front doorstep, he was shot and he was killed. This man had a knife in his hand, allegedly, but he, of course, was never going to be able to overpower police who were all armed forces. This case is a very disappointing one. This result is a very disappointing one. And it's heartbreaking. I want to talk about a major thing that I said. I remember saying this in and around that time. Ireland are like somebody who is suffering with, who has, let's say, a tumor, who does not know they have a tumor, who is pointing and talking about people who are now going through chemo. The people going through chemo would be America. They sit around and they point fingers of how bad America is and how we are not as bad as America. And this is why I take a lot of pride in unearthing the evidence in the history of Ireland's racist history, that Africans were being sold in Ireland. I'll put that on the screen for you guys to see it. And this is why I spend a lot of my time doing how Irish people were slave owners in Jamaica. This is no different if we think about it to the British people. The British people rarely did slavery in their homeland, but they did it in the West Indies. So I don't understand why it's kind of as though, perceived as though Ireland were completely innocent. But because of the history within America, of, slavery taking place on that soil. And then, of course, the aftermath of that and how there still wasn't going to be an instant, peace in terms of now seeing the black man as an equal. And this is where we are today. But because of, I guess, the low numbers of black people at that time, not that there wasn't any, I also unearthed the mother home scandal of the mixed race children who were left in orphanages, unwanted children, and the racism they suffered. So there were Africans here, and they were so ill-treated. But of course, the numbers were greater in America, which is what makes the history of civil rights and on all the sorts. But I believe if Africans were here, and more, I guess at a higher rate, I do believe we would have had to have our own civil rights movements. But the perception is that Ireland would have never, succumbed to that level of racism, when that's just absolutely not true. There's evidence of there being that level of racism in Ireland at the time. But when we think about this case, and we think about the fact that America have obviously had this history, and Ireland have always looked at themselves as better than America. And that's the one thing that you always hear when you hear people talk. It's like, oh, we're not America, this is not America. We're better than that. We're not as bad as America, Be appreciative of what you have here, of the level of bad you have here. At least it's not as bad. What an oppressive way to think and expect us to put up with that. But for me, this case, and even now how it's unfolded, has really been an evidence to how bad Ireland really is. And the fact that they thought that they could just, blow it over, This case, I believe, had it been in America, would have been a no-brainer. Those police would have been charged. And I think this is where we get to see someone even left in the comments within the Black Irish post about this, that, just a reminder that we're not even second class citizens here. I believe that there's no absolute way an African American or an American jurisdiction and court system would have actually come up with this verdict to not even charge the police. I definitely do think there would have been maybe a chance of the police maybe coming out as innocent, but to not even persecute them. It's really a high level of racism, what we see here, where they don't even there's not I guess a fear of the African. This is why I spent so much time talking and going on about the comparison between the black movement within Ireland, the comparison between the black movement in Africa, or rather in America, because I believe there is a new tone that we need to take up, and I want a tone of respect. And unfortunately, we have to come to an understanding, Africans, that we should much rather be feared and respected than be, I guess, disregarded. And how this happens is because we have equated niceness to respect. This is something I really hammer on, because there's people in Ireland who are very nice, and we have to also put into account that European culture in general is I want to say a polite culture, if I can say that. So the idea that someone can make you a cup of tea, or the idea that there's niceness, it's actually really silly for us to somehow translate that to respect. And I do think that it also manifests itself when we look at the court system, the health system, any big institution within Ireland, and see how much black people are really sitting in those areas in decision-making places. And I just feel like we need to get to a place, Africans, where we take up a new tone, a tone that will demand respect. A lot of Africans feel, well, look, I'm spoken to, kindly, and we forget that there's situations like a George Nkencho taking place, and now we are fighting for the justice of Luke Momo. And there's people who are actually suffering worse situations, even when we think about the fact that black women are 4 times more likely to die from childbirth in Ireland. I really want black people in Ireland to understand that just because your little life is manageable in your micro, in a micro scale, does not mean on a macro scale there is a lot of improvement that needs to take place. And this is the scariest time for the African, I believe, because there is a presumed innocence that puts us in a standstill. And we're not fighting to finish the job that our forefathers began, because we believe really subconsciously that the job is finished. We don't see there being any more work to be done. And I also put that down to the fact that we've been told to get comfortable here. And because we're no longer in a place of chains and whips, we feel that, at least we're not in chains and whips, and we compare to, what is acceptable based off where it once was. But that's not how, things operate. Nothing in life operates based off of this is where we once were, so at least we're not there anymore. That's the bare minimum, and this is a slave mentality. I just really hope and I pray that George's family have the energy to continue to fight, the will to continue to fight and continue pushing. Just today I was having a conversation about the Stephen Lawrence case and how they continue to push. The mother, such a strong woman, pushed for, God knows, like years she pushed for that case. And now we have a Stephen Lawrence Day within the UK. And it really has to go like that, unfortunately. And for me, I kind of left a message to the sister of George, and I just said, this case, I cannot say I ever expected it to go differently, but I think something far bigger has happened. Although it doesn't look like the result you wanted now, I think your brother, his life and his legacy has served to show how far we really are from where we need to be. And as someone who has started becoming, a Pan-Africanist from the year 2020, I've come to understand, how far we really are. And I get frustrated when I'm thinking of how do I communicate to people that the presumed innocence, the presumed niceness, the presumed relationships we have with, the Irish natives and the dynamic in those relationships is really just not good enough. And I really kind of gush over the African Americans and the culture I learned there, and the dynamics between white and black, and the respect that white people have for the black struggle. It's massive and it's huge. Actually, I'll actually say it. I think, there is a degree where white Americans, the ones who do stand behind black people the same way Irish people stand behind Palestine. There is a level there of like, listen, I am fighting with my brothers and sisters, and there's a desire to understand, there's a desire to want to find out, there's a desire to empathize and to put respect where it's due. Where I think here we think that our equality or equity is going to come from a level of pity, when I think that route is going to lead us to a dead end. We need to garner respect. And unfortunately, this is where we take accountability. Black people talk about taking accountability. This is where we take accountability. We take accountability when we understand that the path that we have been choosing a path that is going to bring us to a dead end where we get empty niceness. One of the things I've been trying to stress in my videos was the African made a massive mistake. A massive mistake when he came to Europe and he did not inform his child of the history between the African and the European. I mean thoroughly informed. If there's one thing I'm learning as I grow up as a Black Irish, youth, I'm realizing that the African amongst ourselves as a people, our understanding of our history and everything and why we were here in the first place, why Africans decided, why Europe, why Europe, why are we not longer in Africa, is the reason why there is an empty space, a disjointed understanding of why we are here in Europe, why people fail to understand neocolonialism. It's because Africans, my mom, I really appreciate her ability to be honest with me. She said, Harrison, I let you down. I let you down the fact that I was now living with my children and raising them in Ireland, and I never informed them that I was in Zimbabwe, in Rhodesia, and then Rhodesia became Zimbabwe when it got its independence. Yet I never sat my children down to let them know that I was in school with Irish girls. Irish girls who were there with their fathers who were fighting against us getting our independence. How do I come here and not explain to my children that, you are now European children, but do you know why? Do you know your relationship with? And this is why we became victims to a lack and a loss of identity, because we found ourselves trying to become the very people who oppressed us and destroyed our homeland. And then we fail to understand and empathize with the fact that the destruction that is still happening is due to the hands of the Europeans. People want to deny this fact. It is a fact. If you are so naive as to believe when colonialism ended, that neocolonialism did not take place, that you thought that when everything ended, that things would end, that the riches and wealth of Africa would just be handed over without any interference of the Europeans or the Westerners, you're wrong. And if you want to get into that, you can watch my other videos and you can find it out. But today I really want to just continue to dive into George's life. The reason I stress this is because Africans have this warped mentality that now that we are here, we should put up and shut up. And I think in many ways we created the monster that allows the death of George to go unprosecuted. Because we showed ourselves to be people who will accept the bare minimum, because we said, listen, you guys have taken us in out of the kindness of your heart, and we are just lost people who came here with no true, I guess there has to be, we have to reconcile the fact that Africa is here because their land, has been destabilized. When we think of people like Claire Daly, I encourage everyone to look at Claire Daly. Claire Daly touches on this topic all the time. She's a fantastic MEP in the European Union. She understands this. I think people like Claire Daly should play a huge hand. And another guy, historian, I get a lot of my information from him, Liam Hogan. People like them should play a huge hand in shaping the curriculum. I mentioned in my last video how the reason why Jewish people are respected to a major degree more than Africans is because everybody was reinforced, was forced to understand the history. How is it that more people were killed in the Atlantic slave trade? How is it that was no bigger catastrophe, known to man, and yet it is second and it's taught. I don't even think it's taught in Irish curriculum, as if Ireland had nothing to do with it. In Jamaica, in Ireland, in America, and yet you talk about Hitler. This, I'm telling you, brothers and sisters, this simple foundational fact will shape the whole interaction and relationship between African people and Irish people. It will shape the interaction. Moving forward, there will be an interaction of reconciliation. And then again, if anybody's in the European Union, benefits from neocolonialism, benefits from the destabilization and the extraction of Africa's resources, natural resources. This will shape how we move forward. It will shape an African person will not be treated like a beggar. In fact, there will be an understanding of why the African is here. So when we start by scrapping off the history, you know why they do that? Because, and I'll tell you why the Jews was not a big deal to preach about, and they were okay with that. Because their heroes, the people that they look up to and admire, there was a risk of their legacies being tainted. There are statues up across Europe of their greats who did awful things to our ancestors. And then the knock-on effect of how it's shaped today. If we were to unravel that in a school curriculum, there is no way you could unravel that without tainting their greats. And this is how we find ourselves in a place where there's a gray area and a lack of respect for the African, where he's a beggar, beggars can't be choosers. And then Africans amongst ourselves perpetuate a narrative of we are beggars, we cannot be choosers. Guys, this right here with George Nkencho, this is just us unraveling. I believe it's the tip of the iceberg. I believe when we begin to put the Irish to the test, we have not put them to the test the same way the African Americans have put the white American to the test. I believe when we begin to put them to the test, this is when we begin to draw out the true emotion. And as we see the anti-migrant movement unfold, as we see things begin to unfold, I believe we are yet to see the true emotion. You know, it feels very good for me when I have conversations with people and I started this, I told you, in 2020, and everyone was like, listen, Harrison, don't bring George Floyd here. It's not as bad. Chill. And it feels very good for me and validating and vindication. I get vindication when people are kind of like, oh, I didn't know that was in Margaret, or I didn't know that was in that fellow. I didn't know we had this kind of a posture within our nation. And I understood it because I could recall and say, we felt this. But the way we formed and shaped ourselves as Africans, we shaped ourselves in such a compromised state, in such a submissive state, that really We didn't draw anything out of the Irish. I hope you're following me. We didn't draw the true emotions out of the Irish. The true emotions will be drawn out. I told someone this, in a joking way. I said, if you brought African Americans and dumped them here in Ireland, you would really see the person you would have never expected to be racist. Why? Because there is a strength that is in the African American, that if they were to operate in that way in Ireland, Ireland have never had to deal with demanding Africans, ones who demand the level of respect that they know that they're deprived of. We have compromised our shape. We have created a culture that is within the parameters. We have not asked of Ireland much. And I know it because this is how we have not grown in our level of impact in this country. And that's why we always have to romanticize America. We have to romanticize, whether it be in anything, whether it be politicians and in terms of Obama, whether it be in musicians, entertainment, actors, because African Americans are people who are standing up and being counted, a force to be reckoned with. Black Dublin culture does not rear the greats of African American culture, because that is reared from an uncompromising and unwavering level of self-determination. And we deprived our children here when we said, let us forget about everything and figure out how we can come here and assimilate. Well, everything done in the dark must come to light. And it is now our job that we do not leave a heap of work for the next generation, but to say, hold on, let's listen to this information that has been left out of history. Let's listen to the information and the benefits that anybody in the EU gets from the exploitation of Africa. And let's begin to make this mainstream truth. We complain about the mainstream not being truthful, but we have the power in our hand today by the internet, by what I'm doing right now. And I believe, I do have a dream that one day black kids will sit, and white kids, all kids will sit and really have an understanding of the story of the Irish and the black man from the beginning. I'll sign off on this. George, we have failed you as a people in Africa because we created a culture that says you can kill one of our own and forget about it and not even prosecute it. They're not fearing us. They don't fear us. And as you know, any intelligent person will know, fear is not violence. Fear is someone who knows their rights and will not compromise and will go to places or go to any height to stand and to exercise those rights. So George, your life will be a stamp for what the work we need to do as black people. They're not going to do it. White people are not going to do it on their own account. It is going to be us having an unwavering level of self-determination that the next person, God forbid, does not have to go through this. So with that, I say justice for George Nkencho, justice for Luke Momo, and we pray we don't have any more. Thank you for watching.
And I'm on a mission for you.